Okay, now that we are done with the basic functionality of our game, we can take a moment, step back, and review what it is that we've done. We can look at our project description document that gave us that goal, gave us that direction in the beginning, and then make sure that we have maintained that, make sure that we are still, making the game that we set out to actually make. So if we look back at our project description, we've got it loaded up here. Let's go ahead and start kind of on our high concept first, because this is really what is our game, the high concept. And let's make sure that we're actually making the game we said we wanted to. And here we're saying we were making a space shooter. We're supposed to avoid asteroids and try to shoot them, and we're trying to score points in a given amount of time. So when we look at the game, we can see that we have done just that. If we hit play on here, we have our spaceship. We're avoiding. We've got our score, our lives, and our timer, and we're basically just trying to shoot as many of these to get points, and last until the game timer runs out. So from that perspective, we have nailed our high concept. We've done exactly what we set out to do. So we're looking good. The next thing that we've got our controls, and just from playing there, we've got those controls set up so that we can just use those arrow keys, move left, right, up and down. We can shoot with the space bar, and then we're able to create that temporary shield for protection. And on that one, we even set it up so that the designer could change out that key if they wanted to, and set it up to any shortcut key for the player. Now the next thing we look at are just the mock-up assets. We've got, the player ship, the asteroid, the bullet, the shield, the blocks, the explosions, all the parts and pieces that make up this game, as well as the audio files. We can double check and we can see that inside of the project right here, we have all of those set up and done. So this is what makes this game, all of these parts and pieces. And we can kind of just go through and go, yes, check, 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 check. Everything's checked. It's in the game and functioning. So we're looking good as far as mock-up assets go. And the next thing we could look at is production time. Now production time, these are our estimates. This is just saying an estimate of. I would believe my setup's going to take me 10 minutes. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have an actual. I'm going to have a amount of time that it really does take me. So generally when you're doing a production like this, it is small, and it is something that it's to your benefit to actually be more aware of the amount of time you spend, so that by the end of production you can make better estimates on your next projects, so that you're not stuck on a project that's going to take you 10 years when you may have only estimated it out to take you 10 days. So when you get in here on the production time, your best bet's to go back through and go, okay, well, I may have said maybe a setup for about 10 minutes, but my setup actually took me, let's say, 15 minutes. And again, same here, we can just go back through and we can say, okay, well, my asset creation took me right at about 45-50 minutes, etc., etc., and just continue to fill out those production times and fill them out with your actual amount of time. And again, it just gives you a better skill set, so that when you're making estimations later, your projects are going to work out in the time frame that you're actually estimating them in. Now above that, we've got our learning objectives, and that was one of the more key important goals that we had. We wanted to learn something from the project. We wanted to walk away, with a deeper knowledge and a deeper skill set than we walked into the project with. And for this project, we are looking at that introduction to a lot of this. We're not looking at getting extremely deep. We're just looking at that surface level. Can I do some file management? Can I bring in some files? Can I do some basic game scripting and setting up events, etc.? So looking back over it, we could take it piece by piece and say, the introduction to file management and the assets, we did go in there and we did start setting that up. We've got our assets that we've actually pulled in from outside of Unity. We've got some basic naming conventions going on. We've got prefabs created for all the objects and things that we're using inside of the game. We've got multiple scene files that we've created and multiple script files that we've created. So we have gone in, we've really taken advantage of creating objects, creating assets, tying these assets together, and labeling them appropriately so that we can manage a project with all these number of assets. Now what we haven't done is actually create a folder. If you look at the project and you look at your create, you can go through and create a folder and then do some folder organization with it, and even subfolders, etc., etc. For ours though, when you can actually see everything at one time. Now, it's okay. We don't really need a folder. If we were to the point where we couldn't actually get to all of our files and our folders because the list was so huge, then that's when you want to start getting into using your folders. Making a folder that says, material, dropping all your materials in it. Making one for prefabs, and dropping your prefabs into it. And then if your project gets even bigger, if it gets to a point where it's extremely large, like say for prefabs, you've got hundreds of prefabs, then generally you're going to want to break your prefab folder into, enemy prefabs, good guy prefabs, weapon prefabs, and just start to work your organization in that way. Now below that, the introduction of the game scripting. We did start looking at the game scripting. We got into actually setting up variables, exposing variables, trying to decide what do we bring out to the designer, what do we keep internal to the code. Where do things live? Where is the trigger event going to actually happen? Where are our audio files going to actually be on our players and our objects? And with our GUI elements, we actually started putting GUI elements onto the screen. So we've now got things like our score, our lives, our counter. So we're putting that information for the user, for the player, so they can see what's going on. We've got our input. For our introduction to our input, we've actually started to find out, how do I get input from the user? How do I, get information from a mouse or from a keyboard? And we started doing that. And then we also started looking at events. How do I actually set up a trigger? How do I make an event happen when two objects hit each other, when they collide into each other? And then what do I do after they collide with each other? And of course, the last thing we were looking at was that scene loading, and then passing variables from one scene to another scene. So on the scene loading, we can see that we've got multiple scenes in here for credit, for loading screen, for win loss in our main menu. So this little part is actually a nice little piece that we could pull out and use again and again and again. There's no real reason to have to reinvent the wheel here. We have something that works, and it gets our game up and running really quick so that we can just simply focus in on the development that we have and make some adjustments in here where they're needed. So overall, we've learned a lot from this project. We've looked at a lot of different parts and pieces of Unity, and what we need to do next is say, well, how do we take this project and how do we keep pushing it? Because this project has a lot of opportunity to add to it in some very simple ways and some complex ways, but it's a good thing to push with. So let's add to our project description. Let's add a little to-do list. So we're going to go ahead and go in here, and I've already got a handful of suggestions of what we could do to make this game even more fun. So for our to-do list, let's go ahead and do just a list here. What have we got? We've got about 8 items in here. So we've got one that says add extra socket to fire from. Let's do like a double shot. So we've already got it set up on our player, so that we load up a socket for the projectile and the projectile object. And if we were to just add an extra projectile to this player, then we could actually just create, a double shot or a triple shot or a spread, whatever we want to do, and maximize the shooting capacity of this character. That's one of those fun things to do with him. Other things that we have, we've got our add random speed for our asteroids. So right now the asteroids all fall at the same time, but if we looked up some random function inside of Unity, we could find a way to generate a random number between a minimum and a maximum, and then pass that variable into the speed of the asteroid so that when they get generated, they fall at different rates. That'll really add to that gameplay. Another one we can do is add the random scale for the asteroids so that when they get recreated, for instance inside of the asteroid script, we're resetting the position and for the X and the Y. We could also change up the scale and randomly scale the object up or down so we have like a giant asteroid coming down or a small asteroid coming down, and really make it much more dynamic, a lot more fun. The other things we've got add pickup for lives, so we can have some lives just like the asteroids. We've got asteroids that fall down. We could have pickups that fall down, and then when they trigger, then we're simply just going to add to that collision event. We're going to add to the player object an extra life. We could do that for even the weapons, so that we could create, let's say for instance he has 1 bullet to start with, and then if you collect another weapon, you can add that double shot and make that true and turn that on so they can shoot two bullets at one time. And the other ones we have is just more player feedback. This is always an important one. Whenever you're doing games, you've got to be able to tell the player what's going on. You know, keep them up to date with the actions and the things happening in the game. So in here, we don't really have anything that really tells the player that much that something's happening. Usually that's like, say, for instance, we're down to 1 life, or every time we lose a life. Let's say we have the player flash color. That way we know that something's about to happen, you know, something did happen, or, you know, be aware. We could also do that with some of the GUI elements, so that we know, you know, our score is getting lower. Let's play an audio sound so that people know that it's getting more tense. We can play, or for the timer, and then for the score, every time we get a score, we could have some GUI information come up and let you know that you've got 10 points or 20 points or whatever it might be. And then adding more levels. Adding more levels would be fun, just in the sense that we can go in and change up the basic properties of the asteroids. You know, make them fall faster, make them a little more dangerous, have more of them. You know, increase the level of difficulty as you go through and progress on this type of game. And then adding in the solid blocks. This was one that we created up here, but we didn't actually do. But a solid block would be a nice design element where it doesn't actually fall anywhere, but it's just a static element inside of the scene that the asteroids can hit, or you could shoot and maybe destroy with a number of shots. It could have some health to it or something. Okay, now those are some basic ideas of things to push this with. You can always, you know, even more things are just replacing all of the assets with actual content. So the boxes and circles, make a spaceship, make an asteroid, or whatever it is that you want to have. It could be space junk falling and moving inside of space. But with these extra ones, I would suggest, you know, run through these, do them, you know, make them functioning inside of the game. Get comfortable with adding something extra that hasn't actually been done, but it's sort of an extension of the things that are already in place. Okay, and with that, I think we are complete with this project. I hope you enjoyed the project, and I look forward to seeing what you do with it.